Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and this is part 2 of our Python Turtle Pong project. So in the last video, we basically wrote all the code we needed to draw the stuff onto the screen. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. Perfect, so we have our score up here, we have our paddle, we have a ball in the middle. Beautiful. So in this video, let's start with the keyboard bindings. Basically what we want to do is we want to write some functions that are going to handle how to move whenever the player presses a key on the keyboard, right? So let's write those functions. Now it's going to be pretty easy to write these functions. Basically all we want to do is we want to write a function that will change the coordinate, the y coordinate of a turtle, if, you know, once the function's called, we're going to change the y coordinate of a turtle, and if that y coordinate is too high, then we are going to basically stop it from moving. We're going to do the same thing for moving down, and we're going to do that for both players. So let's paddle movement. Let's start with the first one. So we're going to define a new function. We'll call this left_up. So basically this is going to be handling our left player, our left paddle, moving up. So in left up, what we want to do is a new variable called y, and we'll set that equal to left.y coordinate. What left.y core? We're basically going to take where is the left paddle right now on the y coordinate, and we're going to store that in a variable called y. If y is less than, let's say 250, basically if it's less than the top of the screen, right, our screen will go up to 300, but we don't want the paddle to leave the screen at all. So we'll say if y is less than 250, then left.set y will be y plus 20. So basically every time this function is called, we're going to check to see if the paddle is off the screen. If it's not off the screen, or if it's not at the top of the screen, then we're going to increase its y value by 20 every time this function is called. Now in a minute, we're going to set this function to be called whenever we press a certain key on the keyboard. We'll do that here in just a second. But that's basically what we're doing with this function. Now the nice thing is, this function is exactly what we need for all the other movement. So I'm going to copy this function and paste it, and instead of left up, let's call this left down. We still need the left.y coordinate. We still want if y, but at this point we want to check to see if y is greater than, we'll say negative 240, because we want to check the bottom of the screen, right? So negative, we can even do negative 250, that's fine. So if y is greater than negative 250, so if it's greater than the bottom of the screen. And here, instead of moving up by 20, we want to go negative by 20, right? So that should be left movement, left paddle movement. Now I can't test this yet, because I haven't created the key bindings, so it's not going to respond to me pushing keys yet. That will happen whenever we write the next set of code here. But first we need to handle the right paddle. So this is basically what we need for the right as well. We'll just change everything that says left, change it to right. And I'll just copy this so it's easier to do that. Right down, right coordinate, right. There we go. That's basically it. So we have left up and down, right up and down. These are the functions that will be called whenever we push the button on our keyboard. Okay, let's go ahead and create that part then. So it's actually pretty easy to bind keys to a function. We can use a function called onKeyPress. But first we need to listen for those key presses. So first let's write a comment, keyboard bindings. And let's set our screen to listen. This basically is telling our screen that it needs to pay attention to something happening in the screen. And if something does happen, it needs to respond properly. But this listen is basically telling it to be aware there is going to be something happening to the screen. So let's give it something to respond to. So on key press, just like that, all lowercase, all one word. This is a function that is going to listen for a key press on your keyboard. Now it takes two arguments. The first argument is what's going to happen whenever this key is pressed. And what we want is left up to run whenever we press the key that we're about to tie it to. So left up is going to run. This function right here, this function right here is going to run whenever we press the key. And the key is going to be the second argument. The key is going to be W. So whenever I press W on my keyboard, the left paddle should move up. Let's save this and run it and see what happens. And we see that it moves up, and it moves to a certain point and will not move any further because we don't want it to leave the screen. Perfect. So that function is working exactly the way we want it. All right, let's try doing down. Screen.onKeyPress, left down, and we're going to set it to the S key. Okay. So we can move down. Fantastic. So we can move up, and we can move down. Wonderful. All right. Now all we need is right up and right down. And the right up is going to be tied to the up arrow, and the right down is going to be tied to the down key. So at this point, we should be able to move our paddles independently from one another. Now, there is a little bit of a problem here. So I'm noticing an issue. This issue is going to be it's going to be really hard to solve if you don't know this next trick that I'm about to show you. Basically, the issue I'm having is if I press up and S at the same time, those key presses are kind of happening on top of each other. They're overlapping each other. And Python doesn't quite know exactly what I want to happen with that key press. It doesn't know which of those it needs to give precedence to. And it's causing some issues with the handling of those key press events. So one thing stops doing what it's supposed to do, and the other thing just kind of overrides it. So that's going to be really annoying for your players because they can't actually play at the same time because their paddle's not responding, even though they're pressing the button. So a quick way to fix this is to turn off something called tracer. Tracer is it's basically an algorithm that runs in the background that handles which inputs happen at which times. So instead of spending a bunch of time explaining it, let me just show you how to fix it. So if we come up here to our screen setup, at the very bottom, let's write screen.tracer and set that to 0. Now when we run it, oh, you know what? This isn't going to work because it's not going to draw our things until we create a loop. All right, so let's put a comment here on our screen tracer code so that our artwork comes back, and we will re-establish our tracer once we've written the loop to redraw our objects in our game loop, which is going to be in the next video actually. So we'll just hold on to that for a minute. This is going to be important later, but right now we'll just comment that out so that we don't have to worry about it. But yeah, so we have our functions that are going to allow our paddles to move, and we have the key bindings that make it happen. Okay, in the next video, we're going to write our game loop. And it should be the last video of the project. We should be able to finish it up. All right, thanks for paying attention, and I'll see you next time.